In his second big league start, Jonah Tong was burned by the fastball, and the Mets never recovered.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Now, all eyes were on Jonah Tong on Saturday night as he made his second big league start, opening up a stretch here where the Mets will run out their top three pitching prospects in consecutive order. You had Tong on Saturday, Sproat's going today on Sunday, and on Monday, you will have Nolan McLean making his next start against the Phillies. So still exciting times for the New York Mets, but this start for Jonah Tong was uneven to say the least, because I can look at this from two different perspectives. I can look at it and say, if Jonah Tong just has one of the home runs that he gave up stay in the yard, it's a quality start. If Jonah Tong was able to avoid a walk before the first home run he gave up, it's a quality start. On the other side, he gave up 3 home runs in this game. So let's go through how it all happened. First inning, Jonah Tong throws 9 pitches. 8 of them were fastballs. He picked up a strikeout. The only non-fastball was a changeup that did not make it even to home plate. He spiked that thing so bad. But still, the fastball was great, had that life up in the zone, and it looked very tough to hit. Second inning, gets the first 2 batters out, but then he issues a walk. And then Sal Stewart, who is another rookie, catches up to that fastball up in the zone, and he puts it in the seats. And it's 2-0 Reds. Third inning, another elevated fastball to the leadoff man, Matt McLean. Home run, dead central. Then you had in the 4th inning, another fastball up in the zone, but not up nearly enough. And Austin Hayes was all over it, hitting a leadoff homer in that inning. So those 3 home runs resulted in 4 runs, and the Mets lose this game without scoring 4. So, obviously that's why the Mets lost. If you just want to talk about point blank, who's to blame? Yeah, Jonah Tong takes the L here. But I think it's very interesting to dissect this, because even with a lineup that was sitting fastball clearly, they weren't looking for anything else but heaters. And rightfully so. This is what we talked about before he debuted. And this is what I talked about at length with Jack McMullen last week after his MLB debut. Jack is the radio voice of the Marlins. He really knows his prospects. And so it was an awesome show to go back and forth with him about Tong. And what I was asking him was, how is he going to survive with the fastball, the changeup, and not really having a third pitch that he can absolutely trust? Because yes, he has a curveball, and it can be a very good curveball at times, but he has lost command of that pitch in starts throughout his minor league career, and even this season, where it's a non-competitive pitch. And also in the minor leagues, he was so heavily reliant on 2 pitches, fastball, changeup. A lot of times the usage of those 2 pitches in a given start could have been even over 90% usage. Sometimes, it would sit more towards 80%, but he was always leaning those pitches, and rightfully so. The big thing that has turned Jonah Tong into this absolute dominant phenom this year is the changeup, because his bread and butter has and always will be the fastball. I mean, it's an 80 grade fastball. It is one of the best fastballs that you are going to find because of the induced vertical break, how it lives up in the zone. Again, another start here. He averaged 20 inches of induced vertical break. And induced vertical break is that ride. It's how his fastball fights gravity and looks like it's rising. And so with the arm angle that he throws, the way that fastball plays up in the zone, the Mets called him up on the strength of really that pitch and what they saw of his ability with the changeup and the curveball to make things up and navigate through starts and turn lineups over 2 or 3 times over. So yes, there are other things to like about Jonah Tong other than just the fastball, but the fastball really is everything. And one of the things that I was a little concerned about, and one of the reasons why I thought the Mets could have been justified to not promote Jonah Tong and to have just gone with McLean and Sproat, is because of still having some development to do with that curveball and his slider, and even the changeup. Because once he's able to have a couple more tools in the toolkit, that's going to be the difference between Jonah Tong being an ace, a frontline arm, and a really exciting middle of the rotation to the back of the rotation arm who is going to have his dominant starts and is going to have times like this where guys get to the heater and it burns him and he might have some bad starts. And it's kind of jarring to see because he didn't have any bad starts this year really in the minor leagues, or at least he gave up 3 runs in his first 2 starts of the season, and then I don't think he ever did that again. I mean, he was just so dominant. But yeah, it's still something he has to work on. And then with that, though, you still have the fact that he was able to get through 6. And at a time when Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga, even David Peterson recently, they can barely buy an out in sometimes the 5th inning, if not the 6th. Jonah Tong was able to get there. He was very fortunate in the 5th inning to get a double play ball where he had walked the leadoff man, and then Matt McClain was trying to steal second base, but ground ball hit up the middle where Francisco Lindor had his foot on the bag as he fielded the ball to get the 1-force out, and then he fires the first for the double play, which really set Tong up. But then Tong was able to get the final out of that inning and the 3 outs in the 6th inning. And I think the most impressive thing you could say about Jonah Tong's start is the last batter that he faced, Gavin Lux, he strikes him out with a 98-mile-per-hour fastball. I mean, he had that in the tank for his final pitch, his 96th pitch of the night. It really does show you just how electric that pitch is and how electric this guy can be. But there's still some things he has to work out. When you look at the changeup in this outing, he just didn't have it. He landed it in the zone only 36% of the time. He threw 28 changeups, got 11 swings, 5 whiffs. So the whiff rate was pretty solid, 45% whiff rate. But there was too many times where batters are just sitting fastball, and if they can identify that changeup, they're leaving it. And if he's not getting it to tunnel with his fastball, and I think a lot of times he was just sort of tugging it into the ground, and that was the biggest issue. You look at overall what the changeup got him. It was those 5 whiffs, 2 called strikes, 3 foul balls, 3 balls put in play. His called for strike and whiff percentage on the changeup, 25%. So just not getting enough strikes with the changeup. Now, the curveball was actually pretty good. I think his curveball was better in this outing than it was in his first one. There were 11 of them. He got 1 whiff on 3 swings, but he got 4 called strikes where guys are not expecting that changeup. If you're sitting fastball and he can just flip that curveball in there, good luck trying to hit that curveball if you're sitting fastball. You're just not going to be able to. So if he can land that pitch for a strike consistently, that's going to be massive for him. If he can get a slider that he can land consistently, that's going to be massive for him, because then when a batter is sitting fastball first pitch, if he can just, to a lefty, and there wasn't really a lot of lefties in the lineup today for the Reds because they're just a very righty heavy team, but when he's facing a lefty and they're sitting fastball, if he can just throw a backdoor slider in there or a curveball, he can just steal strike 1. And then, all right, now I can still go back to the fastball. Now, if you're still sitting fastball, you could throw the changeup and get a swing as it tunnels well, and you can always go back to the curve. So I think just getting those other pitchers ironed out is something that he's going to have to work on. And again, that's why the Mets could have kept him in AAA. But the fact is, you're trying to win at this very moment, and I do believe that Jonah Tong gives you a much better chance to win at this moment than Kodai Senga does. Just like I think Brandon Sproat gives you a better chance to win right now than Kodai Senga does. And we're going to see this week what Sean Manaea looks like, what David Peterson looks like, what Clay Holmes looks like in that series against Philly. But there's every chance that you're going to continue to say, yeah, as much as there's still development to be done, Jonah Tong's fastball is so good that even when a lineup was sitting on it, they got him, but they got him early, and then he was able to lock back in. And so Jonah Tong still very well could be a guy that makes a playoff start this year. We don't know. I think that it's asking a lot out of Jonah Tong to be in this situation. But it's to me, just as impressive that he got through 6 tonight as it was when he was able to get through 5 with all the runs that were scored for him and having to have those delays in his first start. I think his composure has been very good, but he's just going to have to learn that some of the things that work for him in the minors aren't going to work for him here. And he's going to have to learn how to pitch a little bit differently, because if you get a lineup that's viewing you as a one-dimensional pitcher, they can eliminate changeup and curveball, and they're just looking for that heater, and you go to it up in the zone a lot, then they're going to get off their A swing and try to catch it. And if they catch it, it's going to go a long way. So, yes, not a great start for Jonah Tong. Absolutely not. But I think he still showed you plenty to like, and I'm just imagining what he could still become, because I think there is other things that he can do here over the next, the off season as he's rounding out his arsenal, whether that's picking up a cutter, whether that's trying to figure out a sinker as just another pitch that he can throw to just keep people off the four seam. Because the more that you get them off that four seam, the more that your best pitch can still do what it's supposed to, which is get the swing and miss and get the strikeouts. I mean, he still got 7 whiffs on 25 swings on his fastball and also 9 foul balls. So, I mean, and there was also 9 put in play, and 10 called for strikes. Obviously, it's a pitch that he went to a ton. I mean, he threw it 52 times in this game, but he's still, was able to be effective with that pitch, even though it got burned with it a couple times. It's just a matter of figuring out how to combat better hitters that are better at taking the scouting report and finding their ability to exploit your weaknesses. And for Jonah Tong, that's all right. Their teams are going to dare him to throw something other than the fastball. But once he's able to do that, it's going to unlock everything too. So again, a mixed bag for Jonah Tong in this start, but I'm still looking forward to seeing the next one. And I don't think that this does anything to sort of push the Mets off of Tong in this rotation. I'm sure he's going to stay in there for the rest of the season. And I still would not be surprised if when they evaluate things, when it's all said and done, if they say, yeah, he still gives us a better chance to win than some of the veterans and he could still get a playoff start. But we'll look ahead here on the final segment to game 3 with Brandon Sproat going. That's another guy that has a chance to really make an impression, and he's going to have a big game to do so, as the Mets now going to have a rubber match here on Sunday to try to win a series. But what I want to talk about in the next segment is everything else that happened in this game. It wasn't all on Jonah Tong that the Mets lost this one. They blew some opportunities offensively, and the bullpen was not great behind him. So we're going to go through those things in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you, where you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts on Monarch, and immediately I started to spot some of those subscriptions that I was paying for that I wasn't even using. And you start to see the money that you're spending each week that you can probably cut back on, like takeout really adds up. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONMLB. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I would love to get there by the end of the season. Appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so let's talk a little bit here about everything else that happened in this game, because the Mets still wasted some opportunities offensively, particularly Francisco Lindor ran into 2 outs. He was caught stealing twice. First one was in the first inning, leadoff single, and then he is doing the whole running lead and he goes early, and that allows Brady Singer to just step off, turn to second, fire a strike, get it out. So that was the first mistake for Lindor, who goes 3 for 4 in this game with a walk, and yet he impacted the box score more than he did on the field, because later in the game, he would double in the 5th inning and he got caught trying to steal third with Juan Soto up, which you just can't do. I get it. He at that point in time, he had already gotten 2 throws over to second base. So he had already forced 2 disengagements. And so in his mind, obviously, the pitcher can't go back and throw to second base, or if they do and he gets back safely, it's a balk. So I understand the level of intrigue in trying to go in that spot, because then all of a sudden, all right, you're 90 feet away and you can scratch a run with the fly ball, but you still can't get thrown out in that spot. It really did kill a potential rally. The Mets went down in order in the second inning after that first inning that ended up being another kind of wasted opportunity with Lindor getting thrown out, and then Nimmo drew a walk later, but that was all the Mets had going that inning. Third inning was the one where the Mets really had a chance. Cedric Mullins draws a 1-out walk, steals second base. Lindor walks next, so he had 2 runners on for Soto, who gets a base hit that loads the bases. Brandon Nimmo hits a sacrifice fly that scores 1. Pete Alonso is hit by a pitch to load the bases again. Jeff McNeil comes up, and he grounds out. Again, I already mentioned that double by Lindor in the 5th. In the 6th inning, Pete Alonso doubled with 1 out, advanced to third on a ground out. Mark Vientos then walked, put runners at the corners for Brett Beatty, and Beatty struck out. Brady Singer was very good. 6 innings pitch. Before this outing, he had a ERA below 2.5 over his last 5 starts. So he was on a roll anyway. We saw him really have command of his pitches. I mean, yes, he issued 4 walks, but those were walks where he was being very selective intentionally, not going to guys that he didn't want to get burned by. So it really was a veteran start for Singer, as he just was able to hold up that lead that his team got him and got through 6 innings. So really it comes down to Brady Singer beating Jonah Tong, but the Mets still had their chances. 7th inning, Jared Young pinch hit home run off the bench. That was huge. Next 2 guys get out, but then Juan Soto draws a walk and steals a base, his 29th of the season. Brandon Nimmo had an RBI opportunity, but he struck out. Then you had the 8th inning. Jeff McNeil, 1-out single. Mark Vientos grounds out, but he replaces him at first base. So you got a runner on first, Brett Beatty up, and I was wondering, 8th inning, maybe you get a runner in there for Vientos. Mets decide not to. Beatty doubles on the left field line, and of course, Vientos, who's not very fleet of foot, he was stuck on third base, could not score on the play. So you had runners at second and third, and the Mets were not able to get either of them across. Now, granted, Vientos was DHing in this game. I think if he was playing third base and you would have got the defensive substitution as well as the pinch runner, maybe the Mets would have gone to Acuna. You're also losing by 4 runs at that point. So how much are you going to empty your bench in a game where you might need Vientos bat again in the following inning, because he might be the guy that comes up that can win you the game if other things go right? But that was still a missed opportunity to potentially score a run. I feel like if they put Mauricio or Acuna in there, they probably score on that double. Regardless, that run was not going to win the game for the Mets. In the 9th inning, Lindor had a 1-out double. Juan Soto got a base hit to put runners at the corners. Wild pitch scored Lindor, but then both Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso struck out as the Mets failed to score more than those 3 runs. Had their opportunities to score more, but just could not get the big hit. And again, Lindor running into outs was definitely not something that helped the Mets. It was also a bad night for the Mets bullpen. Ryne Stanick comes on and pitch in the 7th inning, a back-to-back for Stanick. This point's a 4-2 game after Jared Young's homer, and Stanick just didn't have it. Yesterday, I was talking about how Stanick maybe found it, and all of a sudden, you could have the guy from last year that figured it out when it mattered most. And as soon as he starts to bring me back in, he reminds me why I've been calling for him to be DFA'd for weeks now, because he's just inconsistent. Gives up 3 hits and a walk before getting pulled. At that point, he'd only given up 1 run, but he left with the bases loaded. Kevin Herget comes on, gets a strikeout, then walks in a run before getting a soft line drive to Francisco Lindor to get out of further damage. But at that point, you go from a 4-2 game to a 6-4 game, and you're in the 8th inning at that point offensively with 2 more cracks at it. It's just tough to win that way. It really is. And I think that spot going to Stanick, I don't really fault Carlos Mendoza for that, because you're still trailing by 2 runs. You want to save Edwin Diaz, Brooks Raley, and Tyler Rogers so that they're rested for a game on Sunday where you might have a better chance to win. But I feel like that would have been a spot for Ryan Helsley, and unfortunately, because he put Helsley in a similar spot, which I criticized him for on Wednesday, he didn't go to him in this instance. But I think there's a big difference between this appearance and Wednesday, because on Wednesday, the Mets had an off day coming up on Thursday, and they had guys rested. I talked about it on that show. I said pitching Ryan Helsley in this spot was not necessarily the issue. It was pitching him in this spot when you had the off day, when you had the other guys rested. But in this game, you exhausted all your relievers, really, the night before to get that win. You pitched Diaz, you pitched Raley, you pitched Tyler Rogers. So I understand not wanting to go to them in a back-to-back and burn them for Sunday in that spot. So really, that would have been an opportunity to stick Ryan Helsley in the game and see what happens. Would Helsley have fared better than Stanick? I have no idea. Would fans have been happier to see Helsley than Stanick? Probably not. So it's not a criticism necessarily of Carlos Mendoza. It's more a matter of pointing out that there is still a flaw to this bullpen until those guys get right, which is that the fact that they really only have 4 arms that they trust at this moment as leverage relievers with Diaz, Rogers, Raley, and Soto. And so it can get a little bit thin at times. And that's where you're going to need other guys to step up. And in this instance, Ryne Stanick just did not step up. You got to give Kevin Herget credit, though, because he was able to finish off the game for the Mets, which is big because now that does save you all of those guys on Sunday to hopefully win a game. But the Mets, to me, lost this game in a couple of ways. Getting sloppy on the base pass did not help. You had some of your big hitters come up empty in big spots. Nimmo, Alonso, RBI opportunities, striking out. So that didn't help. And then Ryan Stanick having a bad outing just took a game that was close in the late innings and completely changed the complexion of it. I mean, if you just go back to what I was mentioning on Acuna potentially pinch running for Vientos, if it's a 4-2 game, you probably do make that move. And then Acuna maybe scores on that double, and now you're sitting 4-3, much closer game with a chance to maybe actually wouldn't even be 4-3 because at that point it would have been. I'm trying to think. They scored the 3rd run in the 9th inning. So actually, no. So it would have been 4-3 if Acuna scored, and then that run they scored in the 9th could have tied it potentially, right? So those are just the little things in the margins, and it's not the biggest of deals, but at the same time, you don't have too much real estate left this season. And so you got to start doing the little things right. If you don't, you drop a game that you maybe could have come back and won, and that prevents you from going on the roll that you might actually need here to make it into the playoffs and even to battle first from playoff seeding. So what I want to talk about in the final segment today, for one, the Mets might get an arm back today as Reed Garrett could return out the IL. So we'll do all of your IL updates. We'll go through all the players that are hurt and where they're at in their rehab processes. We're going to do a little bit of a Game 3 preview, and we're also going to look at the standings and see where the Mets currently stack up in this wild card picture. So we'll get to all of that here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Zipix. Need a boost to get you through your day without reaching for another cup of coffee or an energy drink? Well, that is where Zipix caffeine toothpicks come in. Instead of the crash that you get from sugary drinks, Zipix gives you a clean, convenient burst of caffeine anytime, anywhere. If you're looking for that nicotine satisfaction, they've got Zipix nicotine toothpicks as well. I've used the caffeine toothpick. It was a fun experience. I'm like, what is this going to be like? It's a toothpick. Can it really give me energy? It did. It gave me a big boost to get me through the middle of my workday. Just gives you that extra edge without the jitters. They're pocket size. It's discreet, so you can really take them anywhere. And the flavors are legit. I really like the peppermint watermelon ice. There's also a spearmint, so it's not just energy. It also tastes good. If you're ready to try them, go to zipixtoothpicks.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. Again, that's zipixtoothpicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Zipix Toothpicks, energy and focus anywhere, anytime. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me. Anytime news breaks from the Mets, you can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and get a live graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, Reed Garrett could potentially return today. The Mets are considering it. He only had made one rehab appearance. Threw 15 pitches in a scoreless inning. 11 of them were for strikes. He struck out 2, allowed 1 hit. And the Mets are saying, all right, he's ready to go. And I don't blame him. Reed Garrett has been, through this whole season without getting hurt until this latest injury. He's been down for the minimum if he does come back today. So it's only been 2 weeks. I don't think he's going to be completely out of rhythm. If anything, he's probably feeling so much better. And you just have to see how he's bouncing back from outings from this point on. But Reed Garrett would have been another iron in the fire that you could have put into this game. So I think we might see him if they do call up or they do activate Garrett. They also have to call up officially Brandon Sproat. So there's going to be some roster moves on Sunday, one way or the other. Kevin Herget is going to be optioned, whether that's for Sproat or for Garrett. We will find out. The Mets could wait a little bit on Garrett because you have a guy like Wander Suero who still hasn't pitched yet, and he might be the guy that goes down. So maybe for this outing with a pretty relatively rested bullpen, maybe you hold Garrett out and you hang on to Suero just in case something happens where, Brandon Sproat has a bad outing. So maybe you hold on to Suero just in case. That way you're not in a position where you have to pitch Reed Garrett in a mop-up duty capacity because there's just not a lot of arms available. You also have Justin Hageman that you can send down as well. It's the other option outside of Herget, Suero. Hageman very well could get moved or sent down, I should say, as well. Now, when it comes to this game, Brandon Sproat versus Hunter Greene. Not an easy draw for Sproat in his first big league start. Hunter Greene, one of the best young aces in baseball. He's going to be giving it his all, trying to keep his team in the wild card race. And for Sproat, he's making his debut in a small ballpark. So it's going to be a big challenge for him to step up in this moment. But I'm really excited to see what he has. He's got great stuff. And as long as he lets it eat, and if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the show a couple days ago. I think it was Friday's show at this point, where I just discussed Brandon Sproat and what the Mets have in this young starting pitcher that they just called up or are calling up on Sunday. And so the big thing was just this year he had a mindset change in the middle of the season of letting it eat, as in throwing it as hard as he can. And it really did just turn the season around. So again, I encourage you, if you didn't listen to it, to go back and check out that episode where I dove pretty deep into Brandon Sproat and what he could offer the Mets. But they're going to have Sproat as the starting pitcher. If he can get you through 5 innings with a lead, you might go to that bullpen quick because you have a fully rested pen. You have Soto, you have Helsley. Thought I'd throw him in there. But no, you have Soto, you have Rayleigh, you have Rogers, you have Diaz. So you're locked and loaded in this game, and you got to win it. You got to win it because this is your opportunity to put the Reds almost away. I mean, if you win this one, it's a 6-game lead that you're going to walk out of town with in the wild card race. I don't know if the team that you have to worry about right now. You have the Giants and the Diamondbacks, who are both actually closer in the wild card race. The Giants are 4 games back. The Diamondbacks are 4.5 games back. The Diamondbacks have been playing great baseball since the deadline. Zach Gallen has looked awesome for them. He's right back to pitching at that ace level. And they got a talented team. The Giants are the one, though, that has been the hottest lately. And I did a little reverse jinx tweet, so you're welcome. It was 2-0, bottom of the 8th inning. Sent a screenshot out just in case it might jinx something about the score and just the fact that the Giants could be 3 games back if they could finish off the win. And I mentioned that they had won 5 games in a row, that this was going to extend their winning streak and would have made it 12 out of 13 games that they had won, because they had a 6-game winning streak prior to picking up 1 loss. And then they started rolling out the wins again. So that was a big blown game for the Giants that really helps out the Mets, as the Cardinals were able to score 3 runs to beat the Giants late and walk it off. So it's definitely the team that I'm watching the most right now, though, is the Giants. They're 4 games back. They have good starting pitching. They have good veterans. And they have Drew Gilbert, who is a maniac. You've probably seen some of the videos of him just going crazy. He has been a real energizer bunny for that team. And it would hurt if the Giants were able to make a run and they got past the Mets with Jose Butto and Drew Gilbert making big contributions for that team. But they're 4 back, Reds 5, Diamondbacks 4.5. The Mets are a game back of the Padres for the second wild card spot, as the Padres beat the Rockies on Saturday. The Phillies won again as well. They're now 7 games up on the Mets in the division, which is all but over at this stage. Now we'll get into some injury updates. Tyler McGill will make a rehab start today with Syracuse. If that goes well, he could certainly return at some point in this upcoming week. Jose Siri made a start in center field, played the whole game, went 1 for 5 with a 2-run homer, also struck out 3 times. The plan for him is to play 5 innings on Sunday, so that's his first back-to-back. They don't want to have him go full bore, but After that, he's getting closer and closer to forcing a decision for the Mets. They also have Tyrone Taylor, who's up to running at 85% at Citi Field. He might need a rehab assignment soon too, but every chance that Tyrone Taylor is the guy that you want to bring back. This roster right now is pretty full. You have a lot of guys that I don't think you want to lose from this roster. Like, I don't think you want to send Acuna down at this point. He just won you a baseball game in this series with this defense. So I think you want to hold on to him. Jared Young, homers in his first at-bat back. Maybe you want to keep his left-handed bat off the bench. If you do that, who do you send down? Do you send down Ronnie Mauricio and just say whatever to that option he has that we've talked about on this show? If he spends 20 days in the minor leagues, you'll lose that option for next season. If he spends less than that, and he so far has spent 7 days in the minor leagues, you can retain that option for next year. But do you trust his at-bat coming off the bench when he hasn't been playing compared to Jared Young? That's a decision the Mets are going to have to make. And then even with that, if they bring back Siri and Taylor, you got to make multiple moves. So then do you send Acuna down? Can you keep Jose Siri on rehab for the rest of this season? I think you probably could. He's not going to like that. So I don't know. It's an interesting spot to be in. I'm not really sure which way they're going to go about it. But for now, just know that Jose Siri is getting close and Tyrone Taylor could potentially have a rehab assignment soon here as well. But we'll figure those things out when they come. That's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. Tomorrow, full show breaking down everything that we see on Sunday. And of course, previewing another series against the Phillies. 4 games, Citizens Bank Park. It's going to be a fun conclusion to this road trip. Hopefully, though, the Mets can win on Sunday first, taking the first 2 series of this trip. And then they'll go for the toughest test of them all this upcoming week. But again, that's going to be all for this show. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. And thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything, the world of sports, with our local experts for each team, league-wide experts for each league. You can find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.